Rinpoche is going to be here in about 60 seconds, his driver tells me. But Karma is so kind. Karma is translating for us today. As most of you probably know, Rinpoche only speaks Tibetan. And Karma drove in with his wonderful brother today. Karma is the executive director of the Tibetan Children's Education Foundation that's based out of Lama. And Karma has done incredibly wonderful works and has met with the Dalai Lama many times. And Karma, who is Tibetan but was actually educated at Harvard, is a brilliant man and such kindness and so much humility. And I'm just very grateful that Karma was able to come today.
Thank you, Shante. You're so kind.
All right. Great. Hello, Rinpoche.
Hello. Rinpoche, manche giorni ci So Rinpoche says if he's a little late, he offers his apologies.
And Rinpoche, I thought what I would do is just make an introduction. Rinpoche actually just got in from Asia a couple of days ago, just left Santa Fe and arrived here so that he could meet with all of you today. And then, so he hasn't even seen our little PowerPoint presentation to give you some visuals of what the garden is. So I'll make the introduction if that's all right with Rinpoche.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the chair.
I'll stand over here. But thank you very much for coming in. It's a beautiful Friday, and so we'll just move this right along. But the reason we asked you to come today is, as you all have heard, the Dalai Lama has officially accepted the invitation to consecrate the Garden of 1,000 Buddhas. And we are in the process of working on this garden. And we wanted to let all of you know, well, what is this garden about? It's obviously a very major endeavor. What is it doing here in Montana? What have we done? What do we need to do to complete it? What is the significance of it? Who Rinpoche is, who is the creator of the garden, and of course most people know who the Dalai Lama is, but it takes a community to host the Dalai Lama. So we're just going to cover that briefly, and I'm going to show you a PowerPoint, and I'll have to get Rinpoche to look at it too. I think he'll be happy to give you some visuals. I think a lot of you probably have not been out to the garden site yet, and we wanted to introduce it to you because it is really quite lovely. And so an introduction is that Rinpoche, who was born in Tibet, came to Montana about 10 years ago. And Rinpoche is a spiritual teacher in Tibet, and because of that, he was imprisoned by the Chinese for almost 10 years. And during that time, he, at first, he says he was a little angry to be tortured and in a Chinese concentration camp. But then he learned great loving compassion toward the whole world and toward the Chinese, and he used that 10 years as an opportunity to truly practice Buddhism. And that is why he's my teacher. Rinpoche has monasteries in Nepal. One is being built in India. He has sanghas all over the world. He is a very great teacher, and like the Dalai Lama, he is an incredible symbol of love and compassion in the world today. When he moved to Montana, he had a vision of the Garden of 1,000 Buddhas, and this vision had come to him even prior to moving in Montana. And he's very aware that in the Buddhist belief, things are getting very negative, as we know, especially the news people know, how there's war and there's a lot of violence and a lot of disturbing difficulty right now. And so we consider this a time of great negativity, that if we don't turn this around, things could continue to go very poorly. And so this particular garden is being built in order to change some of that negativity. So the purpose of it is to increase what we call virtue and merit, and to have a place for people to go that's truly beautiful, that will remind them of their own Buddha nature, their own loving, compassionate nature, that when you take the veils away from us, that's what's left. And so this garden is a place to remember that. It will be an international pilgrimage site. People from all over the world will come and visit it. It's being consecrated by Rinpoche as an international peace center. We hold yearly peace festivals there, and we expect that there will be annual international peace conferences and consortiums held there every year. And of course, then it has great economic benefit for us Montanans, because it will allow us to host not only the Dalai Lama, but many, many people who are coming to Montana to seek some spiritual understanding of their lives. So I'm going to go through a very quick PowerPoint presentation to give you some visuals, and then I think what's going to be most important is for you to be able to ask Rinpoche questions with our beautiful translator, Karma. So I'll begin, all right? And Alison Troxel, Ali, put that hand up, who has worked for very, very long on this PowerPoint presentation. Oh, Rinpoche, let me move this chair for you. But Alison Troxel has worked very hard on this PowerPoint presentation, and for the last 2 hours, aged 50 years. So this is, now we'll see if the little thing works. Oh, put in the computer. Okay. And obviously these are Tibetan prayer flags, but just like Tibetan prayer flags, they blow out prayers all over the world. That's the intention of this garden. Every statue that you will see has specific prayers that are made that will function as these prayer flags in the Himalayas, bringing peace and prosperity to all. All of these 1,000 Buddhas are handmade by Montanans, and we have a couple of sites they're being made in. And as you can see, they are beautiful. And again, the purpose of gazing on a Buddha statue is to awaken our own Buddha natures so that we can truly live happier lives and create happiness for all beings. And as you know, His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, will be visiting. And he is the secular and the spiritual leader of Tibet. He has been a real force and always a continuous voice for nonviolence in the world. He has authored over 75 books he's met with. Even though the president had him come in the back door, he did welcome him in. And His Holiness has met with state leaders, of course, all over the world. At any place His Holiness goes, people are very appreciative, and many people come to hear him. And here is Richard Gere, who is not a member of our Sangha, but it would be nice if he was. And His Holiness very much believes that anyone, that everyone is as important as anyone, that all sentient beings carry this desire for happiness. And so the kindness that he extends toward Richard Gere is the same kindness that he extends toward the most mongrel dog. It's all one for His Holiness, and he aspires us to that. He is going to be coming to Montana, we are hopeful, in 2011. As you know, the garden is on the Salish, Confederate Salish, Pandre Kootenai Confederate tribal land. We did meet with the tribal council yesterday. They greeted Rinpoche with open arms, and they said that their front door is always open to Rinpoche, and they are very pleased and honored to have the sacred site on their land. And it is believed that it will be one of the major pilgrimage sites, and here's a picture of Rinpoche saw His Holiness in Washington, D.C. last fall, and one of His Holiness's people visited the area last summer and visited the garden site and went back and told His Holiness about it. And so without even getting an invitation, His Holiness approached Rinpoche and said, "When can I come and consecrate the garden?" And of course Rinpoche said, "Well, when it is finished." And so we are going to finish it. And there they are. Now, the merit of this garden will be immeasurable, such that it will infuse the wind with blessings that will be carried to lands far and wide. And these are two of Rinpoche's teachers. The one on the right is Tulku Orkin Chemchok, who Rinpoche met in prison. Very high spiritual teacher. And Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche on the left, who Rinpoche studied with for 14 years after he got out of prison. And Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche is very highly known. And he has been reincarnated at this time, and he was one of the Dalai Lama's teachers. This is one of Rinpoche's monasteries after he got out of prison. He went to Nepal, and instead of building a monastery, he built a home for the Tibetan nuns. Many of them were there. They had no home to live in. Rinpoche has great respect for women Buddhists, so his first building was actually a nunnery. And because they all shave their heads, which I should someday, those are all anis, those are nuns. People think they could be monks, but no, these are anis. And sitting with Rinpoche in front of the turquoise leaf monastery. And here we are, Arlee, Montana. And, you know, if Rinpoche had chosen to live in New York or San Francisco, you know, this garden would have been done years ago. And there's just a few of us, people as we know in Montana. And yet he said, this is here, this is a sacred place, this is where the pilgrimage site must be. This is our Sangha house in beautiful Arlee. This is Rinpoche with some of his students who travel from all over the world to come to Arlee and study with Rinpoche. Rinpoche, we were fortunate to have him live here for a while. Now he just visits 3 or 4 times a year, and we are so grateful that he does visit. This is more of his students. And Rinpoche had the vision of a garden of 1,000 Buddhas, and I would like to introduce that to you. If you haven't been out there, this is the land that it is on. Rinpoche had a vision of this land many years ago, and it's shaped like a lotus. Where the garden is the center of the lotus, and the mountains around are like the petals of a lotus. There's always rainbows out there, and the sky is this beautiful dome over the lotus. And this is the garden in construction. This is the garden when it's going to be complete. And you will see that in the center is a beautiful statue. You'll see more pictures of her. This is Yum Chenmo. This is the mother of all Buddhas, Prajnaparamita. And this is the Sacred Heart Sutra for all Buddhists everywhere. And she represents the mother of all Buddhas, emptiness from whence all compassion arises. The 1,000 Buddhas will be lining the spokes. This is a Dharma wheel with the 8 spokes of the Dharma wheel. Around it will be the stupas. These are also statues that are not of the Buddha, but they represent the enlightened mind of the Buddha. And it will be beautifully landscaped with medicinal plants. And it looks very grassy here, but we will actually have indigenous landscaping. And this is Yum Chenmo. Yum Chenmo, she will be painted. She's a 23-foot statue. Again, to gaze upon her just awakens this vitality and this love that we have in our hearts. When Rinpoche built her just as tradition, in the bottom of the statue, he buried a lot of negative symbols, such as weapons, to be suppressed, so that negative energy is suppressed. There are very sacred relics of the Buddha himself in the middle, plus thousands of Tibetan texts to increase peace and vitality in the world. And here's another face of Yum Chenmo. Yum Chenmo was not part of this original garden design until after 9/11, and Rinpoche saw the violence increasing in the world, and it was after that that he realized we must very quickly stop this negativity. So then he had the mother of all Buddhas, the mother that from whence all compassion and loving kindness arises, in the center, so that things would proceed much more quickly. Where the arrows are, these are 4 carved Buddhas out of volcanic stone. Each one weighs 1,700 pounds. They represent the 4 Buddhas who've already been born. The last one was Shakyamuni, who's the Buddha of our time that was born 2,500 years ago. Picture of Rinpoche and the Buddha. And these other 1,000 Buddhas are prophesied. According to Buddhist belief, when the last kalpa was at an end, the world was covered with a flood. But 1,000 lotuses arose out of the flood, and it was prophesied at that time that this would be a very fortunate time, and that 1,000 Buddhas would be born in order to teach people loving compassion. So far, 4 have been born. And unless we can change this negativity we're going toward, I'm not sure about these other 1,000 being born. That's why we're boarding them, we're birthing them, we're inviting them to come help us. And as you can see, this is how the Buddhas will be lighting the walkways. For our Peace Festival, we put them on thrones of straw bales, as is our Montana fashion. And we display them for everyone. And again, the Buddha statues, to look at them, we remember who we really are when we're not so distracted by the shopping or anger or desires that we tend to get distracted by in our culture. Beautiful face of the Buddha. And then this is just showing another feature, which is the beautiful pond, the waterfall. This is Kuan Yin. This is Kuan Yin in the Montana snows. And a student had this sent over from, I believe it was from Taiwan, hand carved again out of volcanic stone. And it's surrounded by lavender gardens that the students take care of very carefully, and we sell them at the farmer's market. Another thing we do every year is we have a peace festival. And again, it's to promote the tradition of nonviolence. As we know, everybody agrees on peace. That's not an issue. How to get to peace is often heavily debated with wars and violence. But if we can just gather in the name of peace, and so that's why Rinpoche has dedicated the garden as a peace center. And the beautiful Tibetan tents are put up, people gather. These are some of the international dancers from Missoula. This is Rinpoche's favorite dancer. He's always so happy when she comes up. Quite lovely. And we have musicians, artists, poets who gather in the name of peace with us every year. The benefits of the garden, this is kind of an interesting way to look at it that, again, Ali put together. Of course, this is our sacred planet. And this is a map of the world. And Rinpoche originally named the garden the Magadha Garden of 1,000 Buddhas, because that is the area where Bodh Gaya is. And Bodh Gaya is the birthplace of the Buddha, and so it's a huge spiritual center. I mean, thousands and thousands of people go there every day. And Rinpoche feels that this is going to be a comparable center. It will be one of the major pilgrimage sites on our continent, right here in Montana. And so there we are, approaching Montana, yay. The beautiful clouds and skies over Montana. Here we are landing in Arlie, and again talking about the spiritual benefits to have a place that of such spiritual promise. Rinpoche teaches that just insects, birds, the wind that flows over this garden is going to reap great benefits. And of course, for us people living nearby a sacred site like this, our lives will be much better and much happier. And then people will be arriving from all over. Again, beautiful statue, and we expect that leaders from all over the world, especially teaching spirituality and peace, will gather at this garden site. The social benefits, I wish you had been at our last Peace Festival, for those of you who weren't there, I know some were, but this is Frances Moore Lappé, you know, one of the most famous international authors of all time. This woman has, I think it's 32 honorary doctorate degrees. Okay, so that's one more than I do, but I'm impressed. But she flew in from Boston. She was the author of Diet for a Small Planet and is one of the main social activists alive today in the world. And she came to speak at our Peace Festival to talk about loving compassion and social justice. And this is a good friend of hers, Lama Somo, who is Rinpoche's student, who is his first student to become a Lama in the Western world. As you know, this is our beloved Betsy from Jeanette Rankin Peace Center. Every year they are a force at our Peace Festival to remind people locally how we can act locally in order to have peace globally. This is beautiful Julie Kajun, a very important Salish person who is our liaison with the tribe. And I had to point out, Julie Kajun, as most of you know, if you read Utne Reader last month, they had the 50 present-day visionaries in the world. The Dalai Lama was on the cover, and Julie was one of the 50 inside. And here she lives, right here with us. She's an incredible, beautiful leader. She came to speak to us about the children, and of course, that's why all of us are doing this, is for our children, so that they may have a future and that their children's children may have a future. And after we're all passed on, which who knows when that will be, our children will be glad that we have done this work. And you know, down to the economic benefit, many people have been employed, will continue to be employed in just the physical making of the garden. It's a very large undertaking, as you can see. This was last summer, the canopy roof being put on Yung Chenmo. And of course, dedicated volunteers. We are a small Sangha, but the volunteers who keep growing every day have worked so hard. This is our wonderful Mr. Charlie. And this is our wonderful artist from Nepal who teaches us the old traditional work. Actually, the students here from Montana did this with little chisels. I was one of them, and I did a terrible job. Rinpoche is always out there working with us, but we are learning so much about tradition and truly taking time and love to put up this beautiful garden. And these are the making of the Buddha. And when we don't march them out to the Peace Festival, here they are, stored in the barn. They are so waiting for this garden to be done. We have almost 500 done now, and we will have 1,000 done very soon. And this is how you can become involved. This is our Buddha barn near the Good Food Store in Missoula. And people from all over Missoula now are gathering to cast Buddha statues and sponsoring a Buddha. Many people sponsor it. For each Buddha, there's a plaque. Many people will sponsor a Buddha or a stupa in the name of a loved one that maybe has died, or in the name of their own children, or in the name of a future for our planet. There are different levels of completion. Oh, the projected cost, well, anyway, the projected cost is around $160,000 for this first phase, and it kind of shows it graphically there. I'm going a little fast, but this is the second phase, and again, that shows it graphically, and then phase 3. There are actually 6 phases that need to be completed, but we do know that if we can get the first 3 phases on the ground within this next construction cycle, being Montanans, we appreciate construction cycles, then we can probably have this garden in very good shape by the fall. And again, then the hope is that we will have it complete enough that His Holiness will be able to come next year and consecrate this beautiful site. And we are very grateful to Rinpoche, who not only had the vision, but through thick and thin over all these years has had the faith in us students that that we wouldn't let this die, that we would continue on, and I appreciate that. May the universe and sentient beings enjoy a new era of peace and happiness through the interdependent power of bodhicitta, the awakened, compassionate heart-mind. May it arise where it has yet to arise, not weaken where it has arisen, and grow and flourish forever. And this is the sunset over Yung Chenmo. And some credits. People have worked very hard, and these are some of the photographers. And again, Alison Troxel has worked many hours. Whoa, that's pretty trippy, Allie, having all those letters fly. This could take a very long time.
Yeah, never mind, skip it.
So, okay. There we go. And but I do love it, because all of our productions, we are the Wild Yak Productions. Rinpoche has always accused us of being the Wild Yak Sangha, and we have always said, yes, we are. And he's stuck with us, and we are so lucky to have him. So, Rinpoche.
Thank you.
So does anyone have any questions for Rinpoche? Oh, great.
Hi.
그래서 ini tak anggo ini cara tu pokat nama ini sama de dapat sama ini tapi dari ini cincin.
First of all, Rinpoche wants to thank all of you for coming here, and he wants to greet you with the traditional Tibetan Tashidile.
Ini dan lagi ini cara tu ini tak mixer ke ini pasal cuma ada ini sebenarnya na ini solo na ini macam mixer.
And he says he welcomes your questions, and he looks forward to spending time answering those.
So this thousand Buddhas in the garden,
we've had the privilege to go there and see it, and it's just breathtaking. So what do you think this is going to do for Missoula residents here when they get a chance to walk through the grass and see the Buddhas?
이제 디스가 먼저 되게 짧이스 근데 산제 동요 사티 우리가 빼닝기 부두스 빼 할래지 두스이나 메티바티에 텔레 디 dum라데 상마차지 당당 미술라 대샤니 유미 요르발라 존조 파게 키 딘데 예미시 존조 페ン데리오 해서
다 디 아니 딘데 지요레스타 아니 제당게 베나 아니 다 상기 때 당가라서 아니 시외기 찍다 그런 거 추주 거도 아니 시외기 람도 나게 들리지레스 아니 나게 가서 아니 엄마이 찍 가서 이제 시외기 아니 강한달 옆에 자기는 당가라서 빼지 쉬나게 당가라서 선바데도 기고 매버러지 아니 양나 강가다 양나 들리러지 요도 값서 아니 찍 상지 때문에 소지 야제 아니 텍스트로 제제는 찍 그래서 막 대박이나 아주 샘대야 라기 놀러러래 배는 다당가라서 그때 상지 코랑 그찍 남반라고 찍고 있을 때나요 찍 코랑 가르쳐고 근데 막 대지도 왔어 아니 희와다 아니 찍 대다고 그찍 샘대가라서 라기 앞차 아니 배는 제상가라서 딩이 아니 저랑도 밑에서는 라고요 아니 제랑서 아니 나한테 이 마치는 제랑서 로스 아니 제랑서 미선 라베 까메스 산지 코랑 칸데 욕도 같대 나기 되는데 근데 산지가 셔레들 때 아니 제랑서 따로 나 되나 근데 제랑서 서와 가지고 제랑서 하고 그랬어
Rinpoche started off by saying that basically the Buddha is one of the greatest teachers of peace and compassion. The greatest hope for Montanans, for local people, by the creation of this garden is that he truly hopes that it can bring inner peace and harmony to anyone. And Rinpoche said that he wants to give a personal example, wants to try and tell this story by inviting people to physically go up to Ali, spend a few minutes just reflecting, contemplating the garden and the Buddha statues that you see. If you go there when your mind is disturbed, when it is unhappy, Rinpoche feels that it will help you to bring some kind of happiness or some kind of inner peace there. And he says, don't take my word for it. He invites all of you to just go there, sit in front of a Buddha statue, try and imitate the basic mudra or the position in which the Buddha is, gaze at that statue, and just spend some time in quiet reflection, and then see whether it has the potential to bring some inner peace and calmness in our lives. So that's what he hopes this garden will do for all of us here.
Thank you.
Obviously was way too chatty. So yes, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if you could comment. This appears to be very important in the world, especially today. Violence in the world has not abated. We have the highest population that we know that the world has had. And we have a lot of responsibility placed on citizens for building community. We also have leaders, some who are able to support their responsibility to the citizens, but in places we live and throughout the world, we have leaders who are not stepping up to the honor of their position of being a leader. And can he comment on this and the role that this Peace Garden might have internationally as well?
Rinpoche tindes nason I jidang xiewi xin zamling na mimbor xishu di ta dengdu res dengdu le nanga chi mimbor chi chun le yo ma res ani di mimbor mangbo yo yo gi nyamdo la ani tapzu nyokda di mangbo do res 기단 기초 간데데 딜은 고팅이 되는데 요리스 고팅이 카시에는 문에 전에 소소기 겐 야고키 기초 샵시 야고쇼리스 이나 카시에기 양 다자랑 소소기 겐티 마키브소 이제 무스 단단 먼저기 산제풍 단단한 누라죠봐 기단 지기다 산에 내일 아니 배우까지 지금 나도 숨어서 쏴 이나 최상 zamling 산에 걸는 시험이는 아니 이 배우는 가리가 됐어. 저 너도 된대대 진짜.
라서 이니 어떻게 했어? 되니 다 괜찮아라는 쪽에 또 가르쳐 그러고 단 잠불랭이 지 용라다. 이니 단데 다 괜찮게 돌지 가르쳐. 이니 배망고 요래서. 뒤쪽 지휘도 가르쳐서나 다 나랑 좀 생기한 탐지 지 ene dranyamda ene ta thamche pen chisera rangyen sama ene chita ngara so karsa ene chiba yim ke tawa de ene pacha lak ro yores ta jamba da ingye da sewa da de ta la rang chibo de ne cheta ya ene chi yan phagwa yin da wo chi ge thoni ta rang ke yan hong ge de ne so de ne sam ge thoni ini cik pensiun dressing je, coba yungnya, coba yungnya. Ini macamnya, tadi kita ni macam tadi, coba jadi jadi yung yores.
Wonderful, because if Rinpoche goes on, I won't be able to remember. Anyway, Rinpoche started off by saying, in order, he agrees with you that indeed this is a time when there is a lot of strife. There is a lot of conflict in the world, and according to him, he thinks that at least one of the reasons why we have all these conflicts, why we have all this strife, is because people all over the world are forgetting the basic human qualities that are alike all over. Basic qualities of compassion, love, caring for each other. Instead, more people seem to be focusing on getting ahead of others, even at the expense of others, if it means that you yourself can be one up on your competitors. And so this competition at the expense of core human values, he feels, is at the root of these conflicts.
미참아지 얘네 대화 나바이마 동안 문더바이마 아주 기바이마 하고 그러고 대니 아니 말아서 그 소소그 집에나 아니 아주 펜슨게 아니 드라와제야 삼히제야 딱 대차게나 펜슨 얘네 그럼제야 되게 지금 아주 드라제야 처럼 같이 모여랬어.
This is in order for us to come closer to each other. He says we must base it on this premise that we are all alike, in the sense that every one of us wants happiness, we don't want unhappiness. That is a sound premise to start with, and if we can accept that premise, then we can reach out to each other, try and communicate and make a good start.
Any reason that around the caressing of any shachoyina, mochoyina. Then it is a little gas of Nabo Marbo, Harina, I took any keep what is it that the name by the Solar, they are the so much what is.
And this is whether you're from east or west, whether your hair is black or blonde, basically we all share same values, in the sense that all of us truly want happiness, all of us truly don't want unhappiness.
이제 당그 주름 배워지나 망치와 다지 가서 예멘지 가서 얘네 잠바 인게 예멘 참 희행을 주로 참
similar, you have different religions, but if you pay attention, all of them basically teach the same core values of loving, kindness, compassion.
얘네야 나랑 찍고대 싸마 땅마들 맞아 참아 냐나 루로체 얘네 참 냐나 더 배려제 근데 진짜는 아주 배차게는 아니 조 말아서 그더니 단 잠불에 시와지 거 아주 조금더니 미 소속의 셈을 시와지 버렸어 셈을 시와지 봐라 와서 상가 냠는 거 냠는 소속도 되는 계산을 드리는 다 모두 제리지 시작해 버렸어.
And he says, you know, the secret is not to focus on yourself and try and bring about a peaceful world, but a peaceful world starts with a peaceful self. If you can find peace and compassion in yourself, that's the first step towards building a peaceful society.
단 이생활하던 남과라고 지이나 남기 취지 짜와데 근데 샴바다 닌지 제메들 쓰기 어렸어.
And as far as Buddhism is concerned, our core values is of altruism, trying to do something for others, trying to have compassion in our daily lives. That's what Buddhism's core values are.
아주 배는 semjen 가서 미자마고 아주 semjen 담기 찍과를 쓰기랬어.
And even leaving aside human beings, as a Buddhist, we consider all animals, every sentient being equal.
제가 다 나랑저 가서 그러고 배는 찍세네. 다 나저 아니 찍 대다고 지금 아주 누나 진야대요. 아니 나랑저 아니 초직니 내가 붙어나. 딱 나랑저 배 자기나 주로돼서 냠들. 근데 나랑저 배 찍세네. 시도제야, 틀럼제야, 모름제야. 타도그이나 배나다 대다고 산지지 거기서 배는 통과, 퇴바, 상어지 다 됐었던 지그지 아니 삼지장 소속의 줄지 시비게 사원터야 잠바다 닝기지야 그리고 그거 망고 요래서 다지 아니 맞아 잠불랭기 기퉁이 쏘는데야 헬줘야 해야 치어도 아니 당하라 저거들이 맞아 되게 치어도
And then focusing back to the garden, he says, you know, at the local level, he tried to explain, but he says it's the creation of the garden is not per se only Buddhist, but you know, it's a place where people of different faiths, different backgrounds can come together. And he says, as far as he is concerned, it is a place for all of us to collectively accumulate good merit so that, you know, the world around us can be a better place.
그래서 딱 와서 보면은 당고 가서 보면은 아니 속관직 가서 충청적인 아니 말하는 거지 현선지 재와지 시와지 잠반인지지 근데 되는 말하는 거 보면은 아주지 아니 매장제라고 제이나 매장제 시대 차로 그래서 대나기 된다고 다 이런제를 차는 이런제의 시대 차 그래서 대나기 편선되는 잠불랭이야 근데 마음도 지나는 잠불랭 시대 용도 그래서 나가는 또 되게 무효돼
Rinpoche went back to his theme of saying that, you know, we have a small community here, a small sangha here. If this small sangha can contribute towards bringing peace in this region, it's a start as far as creating a peaceful world is concerned. If suppose there are more peaceful communities all over the world, that's what will make a global peace movement forward. Yes.
How can I help?
어디 하고 가르치는 그래서 나한테 이렇게 책 탈레나한테 말와 그래서 그 가르치는 팽개를 로바지에 남카리요 그래서
아 로바지야 남들이 조자를 근데 딱 그래서 로바지야 망고지 고소부터 다 고소를 망고지들이 고소 내가 쉬고도 고소 남고 망고요 그래서
Really, he says the best person to contact is George. They have devised various schemes by which you can. Yes, sir.
I wonder if Rinpoche would have anything to share with us with regard to his 10-year imprisonment, and I would imagine the disappointments, frustrations, perhaps anger, negative feelings that he was able somehow to transform into compassion during that period, and whether you would care to share anything to a general audience on the process of turning disappointment, frustration into love.
This was Christian Jingama, Zon Shu Gap to Allah, and Tango, Shadam, get in the end, he gave this. You know, and Kalikali, Jura Chinchi, and the Jansen, Jurtu, and the Koyo Sari. Japan Tindeko, which is positive, Continental, and here.
다티 에네 나랑 미견단에 고조들 말했어. 다티 나랑 매미기 냠뇨레스.
And he's happy to share it with you because it's not something which he heard or read from somewhere that he's sharing it, but it's something which he experienced himself.
드니 가레인스나 다 계단도 맞지 맞지 대화다 동안 생기지 띵 걸어왔어 내가 동안 생기때 아니 그지 치고 보라고 지도 치고 찍고 때라 개치 보래미도 없어 저 생기 토니 내도 뭐만 그 생기 토니 제도 없어
And he says, we all talk about happiness, unhappiness, almost as if it was something physical. But he says, from his experience, he has come to realize fully that it's all internal. It's your state of mind. He says he was 16 when he first went to prison. He says he was a child, and his psychology was also of a child because he had never moved anywhere outside apart from the region where he was. So all of a sudden to be imprisoned, it brought a huge change in his personal life. He says even, when he was put in prison, so physically, of course, very unhappy in the sense that they were deprived of food, they were beaten, so all these discomforts were there. But what was more disturbing was the sense of anger, the sense of outrage which he felt, knowing that this regime was bent upon destroying all the precious seeds of Buddhism, knowing that high venerated teachers were being abused and mistreated. So this sense of great anger and resentment was much more of a suffering than the physical sufferings of hunger and beatings. So, in a sense, his mental state of mind was more what turned his prison experience into a truly hellish experience to begin with. It was his mental turmoil. But soon he realized, but he realized that all his anger, all this negative feeling which he had towards his captors, the persons who captured him, did not seem to be having any effect on them. All the negativity seemed to be hurting himself much more than anyone else.
Lama, Campbell, that is all kind of didn't only we said, that's what do what about the Lama took a camp, the so cheap young and come out in the Juguyor. Tell a tenny, choking the genital, my sort of around walk up some which top has.
And so what happened was this, that spiritual masters like Rinpoche and other spiritual masters, they were sort of banished to one segment or one section of the prison, and that for him was a huge blessing because he got to spend all this quality time with all the spiritual masters around him. You have to remember he was only 16 at that time.
Then Marang get in the Lama in the Sunus, Chorambe, Control Chigore, Yosare. Then you have been a Control Yaratas and the Gaya Yabuchigmara, the Chagan, Negatan, Negaya Yabuchigme. 자야 톱나 자야 지니네 자. 내가 옛날에 이제 막 행 맞고 또 행 통해로 와. 행도 딸이 그 막 돈을 거 쓰러 와. 내가 가야야 뭐 지금 니만 라면 쓰는데. 아니 저런 내가 가야야 뭐 지금 그냥 저런 셈는 빼 공로 찍어도 아니 저런 때랑 이제 저런 제거여서도 제거여서 희어인스.
And he says Rinpoche of course showed his anger, showed his frustration in the daily chores that he had to do. You know, he would either shirk the work or do a really sloppy work. If he had to cut some wood that day, you know, he would do a really lousy job of it, you know, try and vent his anger on his routines. And his teachers came to hear about it. And so, you know, one of the spiritual teachers called him aside and said, do you feel much anger? Is this, you know, what you are doing?
되니? 아니 내가 대바레스 메테라고 제기였어. 근데 그래서 저랑 되니 레당 다 맞아 난과게 저랑 라마다 두고로 왔어. 저랑 그 레당 리버티 킬랭 여기서 킬랭 여라. 오나? 아니 저랑 그 레당 리버티 킬랭 여라. 아니 다당아 저랑 레제 메나? 아니 스파 손대야 자르라나요. 저랑 욕투고 말해스. 대대 저랑 그 밴드 제스를 아니 소소그 지금 레드 장거요 삼바체네. 삼방에마데 맞이아스.
So then his spiritual teacher started by asking him this first question. Do you believe in the theory of karma? That is in the theory of causes and effect. And as a Buddhist, of course, he had to say, yes, you know, I do believe in the, you know, causative theory. And then his teacher explained to him, if you do believe, you have to understand that whatever is happening on a daily basis is directly linked to all the past karmic collections. And that by venting anger, by venting frustrations, you know, you are not doing any good to anyone.
아니 저는 저한테 자매를 콘소 가지를 찍어요. 콘소 빼 두자 찍어도 나 서로 빼 두고 당서 땜박한가 시그도 빼 두자 찍어. 어느 코츠가 내 내가 싸나? 내 내가 싸나? 리브데 냐와를 조금 알아야지. 레행은 리브데. 어느 냐와는 동네들 저랑 hin게 맞잖아. 저랑 힘하는 동네 hin게 되게 임베스.
So his teacher is, you know, continuing this conversation about karma, and he's talking about the Chinese and asking him, why are you angry with the Chinese? And of course, Rinpoche's response is, well, because they treat us so badly, they, you know, torture our spiritual masters, destroy our monasteries. And so his teacher asks him, so where do you think these people are going to go in terms of their karma? Do you think they're headed down towards hell, or do you think, you know, there's something special up there for him? And Rinpoche has to answer and say that, you know, he thinks that they're going to end up in a pretty nasty place. And so then his teacher explains that if you understand this, don't you think that you should have compassion for these people who you know are destined to go to a pretty nasty place? Or would you rather reserve your sympathy, your compassion for people who are perhaps destined for a bright and cushy future?
되니? 그래서 애니 나치 애니 가르쳐서 때 차이나 애니 나초게 다다 코랑 뭐지 코레기 지나 내가 가리는 거랑 사관이네 지금에서 내가 나랑서 그 레지 다 애니 생기야 탐지기 체대 인삼는 게 내가 되는 말하는 말은 되는 게 내가지 누구요? 삼기는 제대로요. 근데 삼반 나고 있잖아. 엄마가 내가 와서 동화지냐. 다다 동화지 연구 맞죠. 문득이는 뒷박인 되어지 작래서. 대대 고소를 힘게지야. 저기 이제 고소를 힘게 맞이나. 저런 힘게 제사가 이렇게 싸워니는 얘기 말했다.
So his teacher explained to him at a personal level. He says, whatever chore is delegated to him, that is his teacher, he says he always does it contemplating, thinking that he is doing something beneficial for all sentient beings. It is with that motivation that he does all his prison chores. And he further advised Rinpoche to do accordingly, because he says, you are already, you know, like we are in a bad situation because of our past karma. But even in this situation, if you react out of anger and hatred, you're just going to compound our karmic debts. Instead, this is an incredible opportunity for us to truly change our thinking and to have compassion for these people who ostensibly at the outset are, cruel to us. And so in that way, his teacher advised him that he had a wonderful opportunity to transform himself.
Tene nga yine ha goso nga so lega chipa chegu yona ya khon namba kunung go ni chama geware do ngara mageware sha eni ta ngoni ngara so tini ngara no sha sam ngara ngoni sem gewa tagni tene nga pet chisere ngoni chi sem no ya ta ma hinge chi ta ye chi garisa go chi ye yongwa ta tene 지금 내 엄마가 드라트셨던지 지금 방이게 인지기 열라고 지르차. 아니 라마 근데 지금 제제 근데 지금 야때 초기는 코소가 까린 정보라고 지 코소 영이 배경이라고 지 차서. 근데 지니 나랑 그 샘데 되니 요한테 쇼한테 캡을 갖고서 아니 나랑 그 배드치서 동안 탐지 얘다 동안 충전을 했어. 다 자비지랑 그 영도 공부지 지워로 니게 때에서 잠바던 hingi jor차들 가서 연다 마땅에 가래 존에 체벌 찍으면도 배는 말아서 다 삼지어 삼바들 삼등에서 배 무슨 까다리 지어버렸어 다 배치서 칼라사가 맨 요새드네 차세드네 동로에서 던지는 다 배다 그랬죠 다 된다고 지 가다야 돼서 던지 다 배는 끊는 거는 다 등에 가서 연패지 인상 가서 니 정상이 지 삼황이라고 지 남반다고 지 차. 애니 되게 나는 지금 춤추어 되게 제대야 돼. 나랑 그 가도 개발을 저 하나님 야와라고 돼. 신감으로 지는 요소서 패도 얼마도 말하는 정서.
And so, it was in prison that he had his aha moment or, his realization because he realized that his teachers and all the lamas and himself, they were in the same physical environment, doing the same physical chores, but the motivation with which they did the chores made that a totally different experience from the same chores that he does with all this negative energy. And so, that brought about a total transformation in the way he thought about it, in the sense that, like his Chinese masters, in some way he was truly grateful to them because they brought him into such a situation where he had this incredible learning experience. And so he felt not only compassion but also a sense of gratitude. Once that feeling of inner change came, prison experience totally changed. It became wonderful, and to explain in context, when a Buddhist practitioner sits in retreat, you have to undergo all these rigors, fasting, meditation, so you undergo all these physical discomforts because you are trying to grow spiritually. So in the same way, his prison experience for him turned him into a virtual retreat, into an opportunity where he can enhance spiritual growth. And so that is the wonderful thing that happened to him in prison.
배는 나랑 찍고 많이 얘도 가서 하람 benefit 나랑 라운드 무슨 다 좋아지고 그러나 괜히 담비기 취했을 때는 답변은 미세게 답변이 이치제가 와 된 내가 그 답변이 있었어 근데 취했더라 이치 체들 안 게지 딱 말하는 그래서 근데 말하는 거 뭐를 내가 말해봤어 이내 나랑 강연했다고 딱 하랑 나 니는 가도 봐 토부에나서 나 싸워니는 좋아서 다도 있는 게 라마도서 봐 제대로 그랬어 내가 지금 멈추지 네 컴퓨터
And so, the transformation was to the extent that even when he slept at night, it was an ecstatic experience to be in that environment. And so he spent a total of 9 years in prison, but from that moment, he lost track of time in the sense that, he's not waiting to get out of prison. On the other hand, he's almost dreading it because then he will lose touch, he will lose proximity with all these wonderful teachers that now surround him. And so from that sense, it was, a truly wonderful experience for him. Something that he remembers with great emotion, even when he recalls today.
nga랑 됐었다. 이마 nga랑 썼는데 고조더니 야미 고조 있는 nga랑 까진 친구 좀 섬지진 고조라의 nga랑 까진 섬시 지구에 들이 차서.
And he, as far as the Chinese is concerned, true gratitude. His outlook to them changed completely. So when he looks upon them, now it is not of anger but of gratitude. So yes, sir.
I have some purely practical questions. First of all, what does it actually mean to consecrate to have the Dalai Lama consecrate the garden? What does that mean in sort of practical, everyday terms? And also, as part of that question, what does he hope the presence of the Dalai Lama in this community will do for the garden, for the community, and as much as anything, what kind of crowds are you all prepared to?
그럼 이제 제가 뒤지기도 도도인 군주대 주주나 아니지 단다 산재 동네 제고 나서 그랬어. 제고 나서가 군주들 때와 저 당고도 파게 지주 가르치게 됐다. 공개 저번에 가르만 그랬어. 뒤집어 찍게. 아니 뒤냠도 투조디 여름진 때야 주주나 뒤제 뒤기 만수 산에 지 배 데레 가리오세 뒤집어 니와체. 아니 숨바딜 담그름지대 치주나 갑도알라 델민 그래 같이 중거래 아니 민자만다 간데다 중거래 이걸 공부하는 가리오서
다디 ngazu karsa gorgo ani ta zo de ngaran zini karsa ta 당고 저 당고 다 비체게 되어는 거지 칭랍 난거래 아니 다 고치 난거와
The first part of your question is this: His Holiness will formally inaugurate the garden, so that then from that onwards it's inaugurated, open to the public. So that's the part, and he will also personally consecrate it and bless, say Buddhist prayers and bless the area. So that's the first part of your question.
Kaisada ngazu karsata ningjiga hasego da ngazu papa jirezede 다 디고도 문이 지니 메긴 남발 경조절에서 되게 코란 공부하잖아. 해봐 삼기기 니에 신gel라 그래. 마음 거기 간사 되는 습로네 이거네 소탐지기 필라지 신람 주가 미세지 다 와서 가르쳐 애니 되게 뭐다 조 가르쳐 다 신랍생이 다 조를 지래.
And he says, as far as the benefits of His Holiness coming to Montana, coming to this place, His Holiness for us is the embodiment of compassion. He's the reincarnation of the Buddha of compassion. And so His mere physical presence in Montana at our sites, we hope will have the capacity to bring about peace and compassion in the region. That's the benefits he hopes the Dalai Lama's visit will bring to the region. Josumbat mi 군주대 집이나 집행을 가려서 대화. 수박이다 미망을 가서 저 종제에 선세 tuntu스 왔다.
다 야바는 뭐지? 지당 가서 옛날로 지라 해나. 얘네 다당 가서 배는 소강라고다 다대라고 되지. 하는 지 가서 얘네 this two 말해서 다 this purchase 기타 거기서 국자라고 두전 열어. 항상 저쪽으로 열었어. 얘는요. 모델에 다 믹스해서 사실 쉽지래서. 그 하나는 단 물을 깔아가고 밑에서 저 암용 권에 들이지 가르쳐고 그 깔아가고 통도 왔어. 그래서 다 지키는 거는 저게 다 가치 연구위원회 생인데 다 조기는 아주 그 잡히던 지 그래서 다 지 잡라다 그래서 대신 야고 맡아다 대신 뭔가 대강에 통도 빼나 말한 거 포함했더니 딱 버려 가르쳐고 그러거든. 나서 살롱 밖에 나오는 데들아 하나 미치가 용해요 말했어. 근데 말하는데 메스콜 만들었더니 그것도 참말 남상이 이거도 가르쳐서 그것도 암교 어디 가서 사람 레타고 여가 답 대와 여가 강과 대상 그래서 미소 나와도 소소지도 없어. Montana said because mixes was.
Now, it's answering that part about your question as to how many people we expect, what sort of crowd. He says that, whenever His Holiness the Dalai Lama visits the United States, he always gets an overwhelming response. Stadiums and halls always get booked in advance. Montana, because of our population and because of the problems of transportation, he cannot exactly put a number. He says a lot is going to depend on our own effort, how much publicity we are able to do. So it's going to depend on how we can sort of reach out and let the people know about this event. He knows that perhaps we probably won't get as many number of people as with other venues, and he gives an example. He says with his own students per se, when he teaches in New Mexico or some other places, it's very easy for them to come, but in Montana it's a little bit difficult, travel logistics and all that. So so a lot is going to depend on how we publicize it, how hard we work towards its success. But he definitely expects a diverse crowd, in the sense that His Holiness, apart from inaugurating and consecrating the garden, he's also going to be giving religious teachings and initiations. So Ruchen feels that it will attract a lot of diverse people. Ruchen knows for sure that some of his own students, international students, say from Taiwan or from other parts of the world, they are also going to be here at this time.
I do have another question.
Yes, please.
Thanks, guys. Georgia mentioned that if this were built in a large city like New York or San Francisco, it probably would have already been done. And I assume that at least part of that statement is about the fundraising challenges. And I wonder, logistically speaking with that, do you anticipate having to reach outside of this community and outside of even this state, this part of the world, to do that fundraising? How big of a challenge is that?
Montana, Maine, New York, so the Chinky can Lamson to pay this. This is under this work where the pet Penjo with Kangas of the Lega in secret something for 11 nations. And also the charge of Hita Kudichu Manan and the Penjo to Gold Jet and then Kanget take the West, Montana, Chilo, and the Penjo to the Jet, the Chio.
네, 다들 가서 저번에 반죽이 찍다 가서 두고 가면서. 네, 다들 가서 찍기니 다 다다직 베이스. 네, 저거는 뭐지? 네, 패기는 성성, 네, 베이스기는 밑에서 가서 되게 찍을 때 제가 그래서 다들 가서 뭐래나 다지 줄어도 서라 다들 가서 뭐고 탑식 강자다지 쟤는 마도 네, 용사 말했어.
He says you are correct. Funding for the project has been challenging, but since word spread about His Holiness coming here, it has gained momentum. They will continue their fundraising efforts, and if that means like outside of Montana, but they are going to keep the momentum, and hopefully things will be okay.
Dali 여기 좀 찍겠어 나서 뭔가 가르쳐야지. 우리 내 사진 탑선은 맞지 뭔데나 내가 찍 알아서 빼는 마음 받지 땅 가서 다 제가 돌지 된 손하고 배차기는 딱 가서 다다 여기도 소파 샤줄이는 니 제발 좀 먹어도 와. 그래는 딱 타일랜드에서 직스 이제들 가서 가서 고텐트 이거라고. 디 아메리칸 나오니 딱 같이 다다 딱 가서 하람 들라고요. 말씀. 아메리칸 민나 하람 쳐 샤줄아요. 근데 뭐봐 뭔가 들려야 다 지금 알아서 배 휴지 때문에 팽을 정도 지금 가서 가서 다 아니 게다 친구용 거를 딱 했더니 가서 뭐 아니 게다기 다 지금 알아서 싫어 요거래스.
Really, Rinpoche reverted back to an earlier question about the benefits of this garden to Montana and the local communities. And during Georgia's PowerPoint presentation, she also alluded to the garden first being called Magadh, because in Bihar, northern Bihar, where the Buddha lived and taught, it is now such a huge pilgrimage site. He hopes that this garden of 1,000 Buddhas can be a similar spiritual pilgrimage place. Certainly he knows that it's unique, it's going to be unique in North America, perhaps even unique in the whole Western Hemisphere. He hopes that it will be a wonderful, beautiful, sacred space. And so that will be its contribution towards Montana and the local people here.
Are there any other questions?
Just a quick technical question for you, so that more people are able to attend the Peace Festival this year. When is it? Is there one this summer as well?
Yes, and we're planning on Bruce Springsteen, just kidding.
I'm serious. I'm the Bruce lady. For those who don't think that's serious, talk to me
Okay, I'm
later.
serious. Okay, we will have a wonderful Peace Festival. It will be in September, and we are to actually make it a fundraising effort. In the past, we've always just offered it free to the community, and this year we're hoping for some very international names that we can use as a fundraising effort, but to gather in the name of peace. Thanks for asking. The other thing is tonight you're all invited to a wonderful party that Kaibo Architects is hosting for us. It's at their firm, which is right by La Petite on 4th Street. And it starts at 6:30. And there's going to be wonderful music and food and drinks. Rinpoche is going to be there. We will have more information about the garden. But please come. It's going to be a wonderful swanky event, which our Sangha doesn't usually put on. So all come and take advantage. It will be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming here today. This is so kind of you. And as we get closer to, as we're completing the garden, as the date gets set for His Holiness, there will be a lot of international, national press, but it's really the local media that's been the voice for Rinpoche, and you're really the hearts of our Sangha. And so it's really the local press and media that I want to always be taken care of. So if there's ever anything we can do for you, please let us know that you'll always be in the very front. So thank you for everything. Okay. And feel free to help yourself to some cookies and punch. Thank you. Oh, Rinpoche may want to say goodbye, sorry.
So he wants to thank all of you for coming here, for your questions, and hopefully he will see you later tonight at the party. Okay. You.